You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
It is Monday, July 22nd, and we are here in the flesh, in the studio.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been like 3 weeks.
Trying to remember how to run the controls here.
Yeah.
I've been running everything remotely and recording and sharing stories that way. Man, National Youth Gathering, that was
intense.
It was.
In a really good way.
Yeah. We got to meet lots of great people. I think we met all 24,000 people that were there.
It's possible. Our buttons were a hit. Not going to lie.
That's true. Oh, yeah, the KFUO buttons.
Yeah, they were
KFUO
gone
and KFUO
really
fast.
buttons.
Those were very popular. Yeah, I think the first day, about probably 15 to 20,000 came by the booth.
Yeah,
it was a busy day. It was good.
It was great
to get to meet so many young people, both youth and adults in our church body, and so many of our partners as well.
Mm-hmm.
It was just an outstanding event, and very thankful to LCMS Office of National Mission Youth Ministry for the invitation and opportunity to be at the National Youth Gathering, and all the leaders and the partners who went into making that happen. There are a lot of things behind the scenes that you don't see that make that thing successful.
Lots of logistics.
And yes.
I think our listeners heard some of those youth on the air last week too, with all the liners.
Oh, yes.
Are those still running? I don't obviously have any idea.
There will be a few more running this week, and we're at convention. We are not at convention, but we're not sitting at convention, but we have our team at convention, so we'll catch up with them in just a little bit as well. So we'll hear from folks from convention this week as well. Kip Allen and Gary Duncan are there, and so we'll get to hear from them a little bit from convention and maybe hear some of the voices from that as well.
Yeah.
Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for supporting the Coffee Hour. Find out more about them at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
Joining us in studio this morning, Dr. Debbie Arfsten. She's the Director of Christian Education Program at Concordia University Chicago. Good morning, Debbie. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
And the DCEs in the studio outnumber you this morning, Sarah.
That happens a lot. I got to bring some more of my own friends.
Well, and what category would that be?
That is a good question.
Exercise science
or cyclist, maybe?
Cyclist.
I don't know.
Okay, that's true. You've tried that before. Tried to outnumber me with bicyclists in the studio before. But we're talking about DCE ministry in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. It's kind of a significant year for DCEs this year, celebrating 60 years since the beginning of DCE ministry in the LCMS, and just recognized at convention this week as well, resolution to acknowledge that and give thanks to God for that. That just happened, just 2 days ago? Yesterday?
Yes.
I can check Twitter.
A resolution to thank God for DCE's directors of Christian education in the LCMS, and that resolution passed. And so let's go back, Debbie. Before you and I both were DCEs, this is way back in 60 years ago. How did the concept of director of Christian education begin?
Actually, it was before you and I were born, even, so that's even better. So back in the day, churches wanted some help with things like Sunday school, adult education programs. But in that time period, the only people that were allowed to do that were men. And so a lot of these men who were school teachers, Lutheran school teachers, served in the congregation, maybe helping with Sunday school. And they also, many of them were church musicians. And so they played the organ and did choirs. But that was simply a secondary role to their teaching role. As time went on, the need became greater because some of the churches didn't feel like the schools were fulfilling all of the Christian education needs for kids. And so that's when they started kind of recruiting and looking for other people to take on the lead for that. And over time, that became less dominant male and more open to both male and female. And so eventually there was just movement to say, so we've had directors of Christian education informally prior to 1959, but they were just, part-time, very rarely full-time in the church. And so then there was a movement to say, we want to make this a legitimate church work profession. And the first time that it went to convention, which I believe was 1956, it was not passed, but it was, as many things are, let's talk about it for another 3 years and bring it to the next convention. And so it was in 1959 that it became a legitimate church work professional office. And that's when Concordia Chicago, at the time Concordia Teachers College, River Forest, and then also Concordia and Seward, we were the first two Concordias to begin that program.
Is that when, and I'm not a rostered church worker, so I don't know this process nearly as well as the two of you do, but is that when DCEs were eligible for calls, or did that happen at a different time?
That happened much later.
Okay.
It actually was not until 1983.
Oh, wow. That's a lot later.
that DCEs became a rostered field in the office.
What difference does that make for someone when it was a legitimate church position as opposed to actually being eligible for a call?
Well, certainly in the call process. So now our students are on the roster, and so that gives them the benefits of being on the roster. But it's also important if they, down the road, if they are looking for another call, or if congregations are looking for a new DCE, they can go through our centralized system to find out, who might be available. And it's just, to be honest, it's a status, but it's an important status to say I'm a certified, rostered church worker. It shows that you have the training, and that's most significant, because sometimes churches will say, we want a DCE, but we want somebody who's had the Christian education training, and we certainly want somebody who has the theological training. So being a certified rostered indicates that you have that background.
How are DCEs prepared for this service in the church?
So at Concordia Chicago, they have, it's a DCE major, and so it's very broad. We don't want to just train for one aspect of ministry. History would say that a lot of DCEs did youth ministry only, but we train that DCEs are grounded in Christian education and theology, and then we offer courses that relate to children's ministry, family ministry, church leadership, parish education, how do you administrate Sunday school, vacation Bible school. So it's a very well-rounded Christian education degree with a strong theological background for that. In addition to that, most of our Concordias also have a field work addition to their program. So where I'm at Concordia Chicago, we have a 150-hour requirement of field work over the course of a couple years. So they are connected with a local congregation, supervised by a DCE or a pastor, and they get hands-on experience with all those different areas that really prepares them for their internship. So once they've completed their 4 years of academics and their field work, then they do a 1-year internship at a congregation, could be anywhere in the country. And that's a full-time paid internship where they're working in, certain areas. And we try to match our students depending on their gifts and abilities. So some come in saying, I want to do youth ministry. Some say, I want to do family ministry. They're almost all doing Christian education at some level. That's
a lot of training, a lot of really good trainings that these students have a good solid background when they finally have that call to serve in the church. You mentioned a lot of different areas. What are some of the specific ways that DCEs are serving today?
It's pretty broad. I would still say we have a lot of DCEs who are in youth ministry. We have many who are doing Christian education, so Sunday school, VBS, adult education, confirmation is another very strong component of DCE ministry. So in the parish, they're doing all those aspects. Some are very specific toward maybe youth ministry, junior high, senior high. Some are really specific toward children, families. So that would be young children up through maybe grade 5. So it just depends on the needs of the congregation and the gifts of the the student as they start out. We also have DCEs serving in other capacities. So, for example, I'm a DCE, and I served in parish ministry for many years, and I've been at the university now for 15 years. So I'm a DCE serving in a different capacity. Andy, you are a DCE serving in a different capacity.
Right.
We have other DCEs who are maybe in outdoor ministry, camp directors in our Naloma system. We have some who work here in the synodical building. We have some who work in districts. So it just depends on your gifts and abilities. I would say, by and large, they start in the parish. Our training is for parish ministry. And then over time, they may end up taking those gifts and that training and using it in a different area.
Yeah, I think we have roughly 6, I think, here at the International Center now. We're serving anywhere from Office of National Mission to International Mission, a variety of settings. And some of them have other specializations as well, in addition to DCE certification. I know for a long time, DCE programs offered dual certification as Lutheran teacher and DCE Director of Christian Education. Roughly, how many DCEs are serving today? Do you have any idea where we are in that?
We're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 550 to 600 active parish DCEs. We do keep track as well as we can. That doesn't necessarily count people like you and I who are in different roles. But in terms of active parish, probably around 10% of our congregations.
Wow. And as DCEs serve in the field, there are opportunities for them to, for continuing education or support to stay sharp as they're in their field as well. What are some of those opportunities throughout, across the board?
Sure. Well, one that's really specific to DCEs is called Kindle. It is a program that's been developed several years ago, very geared toward the parish DCE. It's a year or two of some training that they do hands-on experiences in their parish to grow in leadership and to also grow their lay leaders in understanding what it means to be in team ministry. That's one that's really specific to DCEs. Others will do like master's degrees in, could be Christian education, it could be youth ministry. We have a couple of them right now doing theology master's degrees. We have some who are aspiring someday to do higher education, so they're gearing that a little more in that way. We've had them do family ministry, some who are going into counseling. So it's really diverse. And when they seek advice, like from me, I just say, well, what is your passion and what kind of ministry do you want to be doing? So there are definitely opportunities out there for them to do that.
Our guest today, Dr. Debbie Arfsten, Director of the DCE Program, Director of Christian Education Program at Concordia University Chicago, celebrating 60 years of DCE ministry. I don't even think if you added up our years as DCEs, we even come close to 60 years of DCE ministry. But thanks be to God for those who had the foresight to recognize the need for Christian education, not just in schools, but in parishes as well, and supporting that and leading that Christian education in those schools. Dr. Arfsten, thank you so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour today.
My pleasure.
Coming up in just a little bit, we'll check in at the LCMS convention in Tampa, Florida. You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.